I signed the final paperwork at exactly 3 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon in late September, watching the notary press the stamp onto the deed. The moment filled me with a rush of excitement that felt like tiny sparks rising in my chest. The beach house in Laguna Beach was officially mine, or more accurately, it would belong to my parents in exactly 2 weeks, on their 35th wedding anniversary. $380,000. That was the price. It was every cent I had saved over the last 10 years while working as a senior textile designer for one of the biggest manufacturing companies on the West Coast. My apartment in downtown Los Angeles was simple and full of thrift store furniture and old hand-me-downs. I never cared about spoiling myself. My parents had spent their lives putting my sister Vivian and me first. Dad worked double shifts at the automotive plant, and Mom cleaned houses on weekends. They never owned a home, never took a true vacation, and rarely spent money on anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. This house, with its white exterior and peaceful ocean views, was my way of thanking them for 35 years of sacrifice. I had found it almost by accident 6 months earlier, while visiting a college friend who lived nearby. It sat on a quiet street just 3 blocks from the beach, a two-bedroom cottage with a wraparound porch and a neglected garden. The elderly woman who owned it had passed away, and her adult children were eager to sell. I toured it alone on a Saturday morning, picturing my parents sitting on that porch with their morning coffee, finally getting the rest they deserved. The financial side was grueling. I emptied my retirement account, took out a second mortgage on my condo, and worked overtime for 6 straight months. My boss noticed how drained I was and even offered me a promotion, one that required relocating to Seattle. I turned it down. I wanted, more than anything, to stay close and see my parents enjoy this gift. Some dreams are worth every sacrifice. Vivian had always been the difficult one in our family, though no one ever said it openly. She was 2 years younger than me, married to a man named Trevor, who worked in pharmaceutical sales and behaved like the world owed him admiration. They had 2 kids under 10 and lived in a huge Orange County home that Trevor loved to remind everyone he had bought without help. Vivian studied communications in college but stopped working when her first child arrived. Her days revolved around managing Pinterest boards and venting about private school tuition. I was never close to Trevor. He had this way of looking at people as though he was judging their worth. At family dinners, he dominated every conversation with stories about his sales achievements and his golf stats, barely letting anyone else speak. And Vivian, she always seemed smaller around him, quieter, less herself. I had watched her change over their 8 years of marriage and stayed silent because families often choose peace over confrontation. My parents adored Vivian's kids, and I understood why she held a special place in their hearts. She called them every day, visited each weekend with the children, and created the illusion of closeness, something I, without kids, and focused on my career, could never quite match. I accepted my role as the reliable daughter, the one who helped with bills and medical costs, while Vivian provided grandchildren and big Sunday gatherings. The anniversary celebration was set for October 14th, a Saturday. I planned everything carefully, reserving a private room at their favorite Italian restaurant, coordinating with relatives driving in from Arizona and Nevada, and hiring a photographer to capture the moment I handed them the deed. I even had a custom frame made for the house key, engraved with their wedding date, and the words, "Home Sweet Home," in a beautiful script. I kept the gift a secret from everyone but my best friend Sophia, who helped me research real estate lawyers and title companies. Sophia was an architect, so she understood why owning a home meant so much. When I showed her the closing papers, her eyes filled with tears. "You're incredible," she told me as she squeezed my hand across the coffee shop table. "Your parents are so lucky." I smiled, filled with a warm kind of excitement. I imagined my mother's reaction when she saw the ocean through the living room window. I imagined my father finally free from worrying about rent hikes and landlords. This gift would change their lives in ways money alone never could. The lawyer I hired, a sharp, detail-oriented real estate attorney named Patricia, made sure everything was airtight. She included a clause requiring my written permission before the property could ever be sold or transferred. I added it mostly for tax and estate purposes, never thinking I would need it for any other reason. The week leading up to the anniversary seemed to drag on forever. I buried myself in work, wrapping up final designs for our spring collection and joining production meetings that stretched past 8 p.m. My supervisor, Gloria, a demanding perfectionist, was pushing the entire team hard as we prepared for our big presentation to international buyers. I appreciated the distraction that work provided, though my thoughts kept drifting back to the beach house and whether my parents would cry when they finally saw it. Vivian called me on Wednesday evening, her voice bright but unnaturally cheerful. "Charlotte, I heard you're putting something special together for Mom and Dad's anniversary. You're so thoughtful. Trevor and I wanted to pitch in, but you know how pricey everything is with the kids' activities. Maybe we can bring wine." A small wave of irritation rose in me, but I forced it aside. "Don't worry about it. Just having everyone there will be perfect." "You're always so generous," she replied. Something in her voice made my stomach tense, though I couldn't explain why. Then she asked, "Dad mentioned you've been doing a lot of overtime. Are you okay financially?" The question felt invasive, like she was poking around where she didn't belong. "I'm fine, just busy with the new collection launch." We went over a few details about the party and food, then ended the call. Afterward, I stood in my kitchen staring at my phone, wondering why every conversation with my sister felt rehearsed, as if we both carefully chose our words to keep up an appearance neither of us believed in. Saturday arrived with classic Southern California perfection, clear skies and temperatures in the mid-70s. I dressed in a simple navy dress I had bought just for the event, elegant but understated, and drove to my parents' apartment building. The framed key sat on the passenger seat, and the folder with all the property documents was tucked safely in my trunk. The restaurant was decorated with silver and white balloons, and old wedding photos of my parents were displayed on easels around the room. Aunts and uncles wandered around holding champagne glasses, sharing warm stories from the past. My father, still broad-shouldered at 63, hugged me with the strength of a man who had spent decades working with his hands. My mother, petite and graceful in a lavender dress, kissed my cheeks and whispered that I looked beautiful. Vivian showed up 20 minutes late with Trevor and the kids, panting about traffic while Trevor stared at his phone with thinly veiled boredom. The kids ran straight to their grandparents, and I watched my parents' faces light up in that special way only grandchildren can trigger. A pang hit me, maybe envy, maybe regret, but I pushed it down. I had chosen my life, and I was proud of what I had built. Dinner was unforgettable. Plates of antipasti, handmade pasta, and lively conversations filled the room. I waited until dessert was served, until everyone was relaxed and happy, before standing and tapping my glass. The room quieted, every face turning toward me. "Mom, Dad," I began, my voice sounding steadier than I felt. 35 years ago, you made a promise to each other, and to the family you would raise. You've given Vivian and me everything. Your love, your time, your sacrifices. You never asked for anything back. Never complained about how hard you worked so we could have chances you never did." My mother's eyes were already shining, and my father gently took her hand. My throat tightened as I continued. "I wanted to give you something that means stability and peace, something you've earned 1,000 times. So today, I'm giving you a house, a beach house in Laguna Beach, fully paid for and in your names. A place where you can finally rest, watch the ocean, and know you'll never have to worry about housing again." The room erupted. My mother rushed toward me, crying, and my father followed, his weathered face folding with emotion. Relatives clapped and cheered as I handed my parents the framed key and the folder of documents. Through her tears, my mother kept saying, "I can't believe it," while my father, who rarely cried, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Vivian hugged me too, though her embrace felt perfunctory. Trevor shook my hand with a grip just a bit too strong, his smile tight and unreadable. "That's very generous of you," he said. "Very generous indeed." We stayed at the restaurant until nearly midnight as the celebration grew louder and more joyful. Word of the gift spread, and my parents couldn't stop talking about the house, the neighborhood, the ocean view, the rooms they wanted to decorate. They started planning a visit for the following weekend. Their happiness made every sacrifice feel completely worth it. The next 2 weeks went by in a whirlwind of work and preparation. My parents visited the beach house 3 times. Each visit came with excited phone calls where they described features I already knew by heart: the built-in bookshelves, the old-fashioned tile in the bathroom, the lemon tree in the backyard. They were already talking about small upgrades they wanted to make, and I encouraged every single idea. This was their home now, their place to shape however they wanted. I scheduled a moving company to help them on the first weekend of November. They were finally leaving their apartment, and the landlord who had raised their rent twice in 3 years. My father had already given notice at work, planning to retire early now that housing was no longer a financial strain. Everything was unfolding exactly the way I had pictured it. Vivian had been strangely quiet after the anniversary celebration. She sent a short text thanking me for organizing such a beautiful event, but beyond that, we hadn't spoken. I was so caught up in finishing projects at work before taking time off to help my parents settle in that I barely registered the absence of her usual weekly check-ins. Then, on the Friday before the move, my mother called me at work. Her voice had an edge to it that instantly raised alarms. "Charlotte, honey, can you come over tonight? There's something we need to talk about." "Is everything okay? Is Dad okay?" "He's fine. We're both fine. We just need to talk to you about something important." I left work early, anxiety tightening in my chest during the 40-minute drive to their apartment. When I walked in, both my parents were sitting at their small kitchen table, their faces serious. The moving boxes stacked around the room suddenly felt unsettling. "What's wrong?" I asked as I sat down. "Did something happen with the house?" My father cleared his throat, uncomfortable in a way I had rarely seen. "Charlotte, we need to talk about Vivian and Trevor. They've been having some financial problems." The sentence hung in the air. I stayed silent, waiting. My mother jumped in quickly. "Trevor's company downsized their sales team, and he's been earning much less in commission. They're struggling with their mortgage. Vivian is afraid they'll lose their house. The kids might have to switch schools, and it would be such a disruption." A cold feeling spread through me. "I'm sorry they're going through that, but what does this have to do with the beach house?" My parents exchanged a look heavy with guilt. My mother reached toward my hand, but I pulled mine back instinctively. "They need help," my father said softly, "and we have this beautiful house you gave us. Much bigger than we need." My mother continued, her voice pleading. "We talked it over with Vivian and Trevor, and we all agreed it would be best if they moved into the beach house. They need it more than we do right now." At first, the words didn't even register. I heard them, but my mind refused to form meaning from them. "You're giving them the house I bought for you?" "Not giving it away," my mother said quickly. "We're still the owners. They'll just live there. Take care of it. We'll visit on weekends. It's still ours, technically." "Technically," I repeated, the word tasting bitter. "I spent $380,000, money I saved for 10 years to give you stability. And you're handing it to Vivian and Trevor? They're family, my father said, his tone final. The same tone that had ended arguments since my childhood. Family helps family. You, of all people, should understand that. You've always been the reasonable one. Reasonable. The word that had shaped my entire life. Be reasonable, Charlotte. Be the dependable one. Be the one who sacrifices. Have you already told them? I asked, my voice flat. My mother nodded, tears in her eyes. Vivian was so relieved. She cried, Charlotte. She said you were saving their family. Trevor is already arranging to move their things next week. I stood, my chair scraping across the old linoleum. I need to go. Please don't be upset, my mother begged. This doesn't change what you did for us. We're so grateful. And we'll still use the house. It's just, right now Vivian needs it more. I walked toward the door without answering. My vision blurred, though I refused to cry in front of them. My father called my name, but I didn't look back. I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning with disbelief and anger that burned like acid. I sat in my apartment that night with a bottle of wine I couldn't bring myself to open, staring at the city lights outside my window as the betrayal settled deep inside me like winter cold. The house that was supposed to symbolize love and appreciation had turned into a reminder, yet again, that my needs, my work, my sacrifices were always considered less important than Vivian's comfort. I had drained my savings, mortgaged my future, worked myself to exhaustion, and now I was being called unreasonable for feeling hurt. The next morning, I called Patricia, the real estate lawyer who handled the transaction. She picked up on the third ring, her voice professional until she heard the strain in mine. Charlotte, what's going on? I explained everything in a detached, almost mechanical voice. When I finished, she was silent for a moment. Do you have the deed in front of you? She asked. I got it from my filing cabinet and read the relevant section aloud. She made a small, satisfied sound. The covenant is clear. Any transfer of the property, whether a sale, gift, or change in primary residence, requires your written consent. Your parents cannot legally allow your sister and her husband to live there without your approval. What are my options? You can enforce the covenant. If they've already allowed your sister to move in without your permission, you have grounds to rescind the entire gift and take back the property. The house would revert solely to you. The possibility hung in the air between us, both tempting and terrifying. And if I did that? Your parents would be removed as owners. You would once again own the house entirely. They would have no legal claim. I thanked her and ended the call, my hands trembling. The nuclear option. The one choice that could destroy whatever was left of my relationship with my family. I sat with that thought for hours, turning it over in my mind, comparing every possible outcome, hoping there was some other way. Anything that wouldn't require me to tear down the bridges I had spent 35 years building. By Sunday afternoon, I convinced myself to drive to the beach house and see the situation with my own eyes before making any decisions. Maybe it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe my parents had misexplained the arrangements. Maybe I still had a chance to fix this without causing permanent damage. I drove to Laguna Beach, my stomach tight with both anger and dread. The house looked the same as it did during my last visit. Tidy garden, swept porch. I parked on the street and walked toward the front door. Trevor's SUV was in the driveway. My palms grew damp as I knocked. Vivian opened the door. For a split second, her expression shifted. First surprise, then something that looked like guilt, before she forced a cheerful smile. Charlotte, we weren't expecting you. Come in. Come in. I stepped inside, and the sight nearly knocked the air out of my chest. Moving boxes were stacked everywhere, all labeled in Vivian's handwriting. Toys were spread across the living room. Trevor's golf clubs leaned against the wall. What I had imagined as my parents' quiet retreat had been turned into Vivian's household at full speed. So fast it was clear this wasn't a recent decision. Trevor walked out of what was now clearly their bedroom, wiping his hands on his jeans. When he saw me, he smiled with the same calculated look I'd never trusted. "Charlotte, perfect timing. We're just finishing up the last of the furniture. Your sister's been working non-stop getting things settled." "I can see that," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Where are Mom and Dad?" "They were here this morning," Vivian said quickly. "They brought coffee and pastries. They're so excited for us." I looked around slowly. Children's drawings were taped to the fridge. Vivian's decorative pillows were already on the couch I'd bought for my parents. Trevor's high-end sound system was being installed in the corner where my dad had planned to put his reading chair. "This came together fast," I said. "You've already moved everything in?" Trevor shrugged with the kind of confidence that bordered on smugness. "When opportunity shows up, you don't hesitate. Your parents were kind enough to let us have the house. And honestly, it's perfect. Way better than Orange County. Great schools. We're probably going to list our old place soon." In that moment, something clicked. Sharp, clean, unmistakable. This was never about short-term help or money issues. This was a full takeover, executed with precision. Trevor must have started planning the moment I announced the gift at the anniversary party. "So you're moving in permanently?" I said flatly. "Well, your parents technically still own it," Vivian said, not meeting my eyes. "But we all agreed this makes more sense. They don't need this much room." She added softly, "And Charlotte, we really needed this. Trevor's been so stressed and the kids deserve stability." I nodded, a plan forming with crystal clarity. "You're right. The kids should have stability. It really did work out perfectly." Trevor's smile widened, totally misreading me. "See, Vivian? I told you Charlotte would get it. She's always been the reasonable one." He came closer, putting his arm around my shoulder in a way that made my skin tighten. "You gave the house to your parents. They're giving it to us. That's family. So yeah, this place is ours now." I looked at him closely, memorizing the satisfied expression on his face. "I'm happy for both of you," I said, stepping away from him. "Really, congratulations on your new home." Vivian nearly sagged with relief. "Thank you for taking it so well. I know this isn't what you pictured, but it means everything to us. The kids are going to love living near the beach." For the next 10 minutes, I played my part flawlessly. I asked about their moving plans, complimented Vivian's decorating, and listened as Trevor eagerly showed me renovation plans on his phone. I nodded at all the right moments. I agreed with every idea. I smiled, and that smile felt like sharp glass against my teeth. From the beach house, I drove straight to Patricia's place, not caring that it was Sunday night. She'd given me her personal number for any urgent issues with the property. When I explained what I'd seen, she told me to come over immediately. Patricia lived in a Spanish-style home in Pasadena. Her office, a converted sunroom filled with legal books and African violets, felt strangely calming. She poured us coffee and let me talk through everything. My voice stayed level even though fury simmered beneath each word. "They've taken full possession," she said when I finished. "That clearly violates the covenant. You're completely within your rights to act." "What exactly does that involve?" I asked. She pulled out a legal pad and outlined the steps. "I'll file a notice with the county recorder that the covenant has been breached. I'll also send certified letters to your parents, your sister, and Trevor, giving them 72 hours to leave the property. If they refuse, we go straight to civil court. With the documents you have, a judge should rule in your favor within days. The house would return to your sole ownership, and they'd be legally obligated to move out." The weight of it settled on me. My parents could lose the house entirely. Vivian and Trevor would be removed from what they'd assumed was theirs. Our family might never recover. And yet, sitting there in Patricia's sunlit room, Watching the walls take on a warm golden glow, I felt an unexpected calm. They had made their decision. Now, I was making mine. "Do it," I said. "File everything tomorrow morning." Patricia nodded. "I'll need you to sign authorization forms." Then she added, "Once this starts, reversing it isn't simple. You need to be sure." "I am," I said, and I meant it. The version of me who bent over backward for everyone else was gone. In her place was someone who understood that respect sometimes had to be enforced, consequences or not. That night, I drafted an email to my supervisor asking for the next week off. Gloria approved it within an hour. In 7 years, I'd never taken unplanned leave. I'd earned it. On Monday, Patricia called to confirm everything was filed. The certified letters would be delivered by 5 p.m. I sat in a cafe near the beach house with my laptop open, pretending to work. In reality, all I could picture was the moment Vivian and Trevor realized that their win had been an illusion and that the ground they stood on was legally unstable. At 5:47 p.m., my phone rang. "Vivian." I let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, "Trevor." Voicemail. Then my mother, panicked. "Charlotte, what is this letter? Call us. This must be a mistake." There was no mistake. There were only consequences. At 7 p.m., I returned to the beach house. I parked across the street and walked up with the confidence of someone who owned the place. Because I did. Or soon would. Vivian opened the door, her face blotchy and streaked with tears. "How could you do this?" she cried. "After everything we've gone through as a family." "May I come in?" I asked calmly. "We should talk." Trevor stood behind her, red with anger. "There's nothing to discuss. Your parents gave us this house. We have their approval." I stepped past them into the living room, noting the extra boxes that had appeared. "Actually, you don't," I said. "The covenant on the deed requires my written consent for any change in occupancy." "That's ridiculous," Trevor snapped. "Who puts conditions on a gift?" "The person who spent 10 years saving to buy her parents a home," I replied, my voice icy. "The person who drained her retirement and risked her future because she wanted to give them security, not hand her sister and her entitled husband a free house.